don't know if you guys all know this, but I used to be a teacher in a preschool, so I know all about working with kids your age. And I wanted to say thank you for inviting my brother Rick and I here. We have to share three very, very important words with you today. They are, yes, you can. We will explain why these three words are so important by telling you Rick's story. Rick and our father used to travel together to make presentations like this to tell Rick's story, but Dad is no longer with us. He passed away 2 years ago. So Rick said to me, Russ, can I still come and meet kids and tell their story? And my answer was, yes, you can. When Rick was born, there was a problem that caused a lack of oxygen to his brain, and it caused a disability called cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy is a disability that causes the brain to have difficulty for allowing the person to move their muscles. So that means my brother Rick, he cannot walk, talk, dress, or feed himself, but he is smart. Actually, he's very smart. He graduated from high school, he went to college, and he has a degree in special education from Boston University. Even though Rick cannot use his hands to write, he worked with an author and he wrote a book called Rick's Story, and we're going to share that with you today. Because of Rick's disability, he faces many challenges. Rick feels his biggest challenge is that he can't talk. Even though Rick can't talk, he is very good at communicating. When we were little, Rick and I created the spell method, where we would break the alphabet down into sections, and Rick would shake his head yes or no when he wanted that section. And then we would go through that section one letter at a time, and when we would get to the letter he wanted, he would shake his head yes or no to tell us which letter it was. When Rick was about 12 years old, Tufts University invented a computer that allowed Rick to use a head switch to spell out what he wanted to say. So now Rick can use a computer to speak for himself. Hey Rick, why don't you introduce yourself and tell everyone a little bit more about you?
Yes, you can. Presentation on Thursday, May 18th, 2023. It is great to be here to speak to everyone. I am Rick Hoyt. I am 61 years old. I have cerebral palsy. I am a non-speaking person. Please keep these three words. Yes, you can on your minds as Russ and myself go through our presentation. Our mom and dad believed that I should be treated the same as my brothers Rob and Russ, which meant when I was bad, our mom sent me to my room. When we moved to Westfield, Massachusetts, after a few days Rob and Russ went to school. I wasn't allowed to go because of my disability. I asked my mom if I could go to school and she said yes, you can. Mom advocated for me and I was able to go to public school in 5th grade. After a year in 5th grade, I was ready for South Middle School. South Middle School was 6th grade, 7th grade and 8th grade. The first time my 6th grade class went to the gym for class. When the gym teacher called my name, my classmates did not know what to do. Our mom did not want me to take gym class at first. Our mom believed that if I took gym class it would be a waste of my time. After a week of talking between our mom and my gym teacher, I went to gym class. In gym I was included with my classmates. For an example, when my class played soccer, my team would kick the soccer ball under my wheelchair. One day after class, my gym teacher told me about a 5-mile road race. When our dad came home, I asked Dad, would you push me in a 5-mile road race so I could run? Dad answered me with this, yes, you can. At that time, Dad just jogged maybe a mile twice a week, and my wheelchair was not built for running. On the day of the road race, our family went to the park, where the 5-mile road race started and finished. When Dad and I finished all 5 miles, we were not last. As Dad and I crossed the finish line, my gym teacher's wife took my picture. My dad would tell everyone it is the biggest smile you ever saw. When we get to the end of our presentation, Russ will ask you a question. Remember, the answer is yes, you can.
Thank you. Thank you. So the very first time Rick ever used a computer, everyone was excited and gathered around his wheelchair, and we were all looking at the screen. And my mom thought he said his first words would be, "Hi, Mom." And Dad thought he would say, "Hi, Dad." I thought he was going to say Russ is the coolest. Rick always loved sports, and at the time, the Bruins were playing for the Stanley Cup. And when Rick finally talked for the very first time, the first words he ever said were, "Go Bruins." Shortly after Rick got his computer, we moved to Westfield, Massachusetts, which is way out at the other end of the state. When we moved there after a few days, Rob, our middle brother, and I went to school. Rick was not allowed to go to school at that time because of his disability. With his new voice, Rick asked our mom, "Can I go to school like my brothers?" And her answer was, "Yes, you can." So our mom went to the school department and she explained that Rick has his own voice, and she changed how the schools looked at people with disabilities. She got Rick to be able to go to public school just like his brothers. On Rick's first day of school, Mom, Dad, and I brought him to school, and Rick has always worked hard to learn and to teach others. As Rick told you, his gym teacher told him about a race to raise money for a lacrosse player who got injured. When Rick came home from school that day, he got on his computer and he typed the words, "Dad, can I run in the race?" And Dad said those magic words, "Yes, you can." Now this is a picture of Rick crossing the finish line of that very first race. And Dad would always say, this picture shows the biggest smile you ever saw. And Rick, after I ask you the question at the end that you guys know the answer to, Rick also is going to ask you guys if you remember something. So if you'll notice in this picture, the number posted above Rick's head is 00. So that was the first race number Rick and Dad ever had. We're actually having a race in in a week, about a week and a half here in Hopkinton, and every kid who comes out to enter that race gets to wear the number 00. So if you guys are interested, you might have to learn a little bit more about that. Rick loved the feeling that running gave him so much that when he got home from that very first race, Mom put him on his computer and Rick wrote, "When I am running, it feels like my disability disappears." In fact, Rick loved running so much, he asked Dad, "We can run more races." And Dad said, "Yes, you can." But there was no way that old wheelchair would work for more races. So Mom and Dad had a racing wheelchair built, and Team Hoyt was born, and many more races followed. Dad and Rick ran together in over 1,100 races, including the Boston Marathon that starts right here in Hopkinton. They ran it 32 times. Here's a video, if we can get Luke to help us out, showing some of those pictures of some of those races. This will be the first YouTube video, if we can get that, Luke. Here's some of the races that they ran together, plus a few family pictures. First race.
If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. If you can meet with triumph and disaster, and treat those two impostors just the same, or watch the things you gave your life to broken, and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it. And, which is more, you'll be a man, my son.
So, as Rick's running career took off, we realized what a sports fanatic this guy right here, Rick, was. We wanted to find more ways that Rick could get involved. Given that the Bruins were his favorite team, we knew that hockey was the right choice. And we played a lot of street hockey as kids. We played it in the neighborhood with all of our cousins and friends in the street. And Rick actually wanted to play street hockey for the recreational team because they had a championship tournament. So Rick asked, can I play hockey in the rec league? And the answer was, yes, you can. Now Rick was on a really, really good team. And he had a counselor named Allison who would help Rick play. What she would do is she would pick him up out of his wheelchair and she would hold him around his chest with a stick in his hand so that he could help out the team. Rick was really good at making passes to his teammates as they were trying to go down and score goals. Rick's team was so good that in fact that year they made it to the championship game. In the championship game, the score was tied 2-2. There was 30 seconds left. Rick made a great pass to one of his teammates. The teammate wound up, took the shot. Allison was so excited, she went, hooray! And when she put her arms up, she dropped Rick, and he fell face first onto the floor, and he got a bloody lip and a bloody nose. And I was in the stands watching the game, so I ran out, and I went over to Rick, and I said, are you okay? And using our spell method, I thought he was going to tell me if he was okay or not. What Rick spelled is, did it go in? Did we win? It went in. They won. Now that we had running and street hockey, we wondered what else can Rick do? And of course, Rick came up with ideas. He said, can I climb a mountain? And the answer was, yes, you can. So one year at Mount Monadnock, our whole family was climbing up the mountain. Dad went over, took Rick out of his wheelchair, and put him over his shoulders in what's called a fireman's carry, and the whole family went up the mountain. And as we were going up the mountain with Rick over Dad's shoulders, another family was coming down the mountain. And the dad from that family took his family and they stepped off the path, and as we walked by, he said, are you guys okay? And Dad, without slowing down, just turned and looked at him and said, we're going up the mountain? Next, Rick asked, can I go cross-country skiing? And the answer was, yes, you can. So we were up in New Hampshire one year, cross-country skiing. So the way that this worked is, Dad would take one of those red sleds that everybody likes to go down the hill and sledding in, and put a rope around it, and towed Rick behind him as we skied through the pass. We got to this one path where there was a pretty steep downhill, and as Dad went down the hill, Rick's sled started to go really, really fast, and it hit Dad in the back of the knees, and Dad fell on top of Rick and skidded all the way to the bottom of the trail. And at the bottom of the trail, there was another family, and the mom said, oh, that's fortunate for you, sir, that you were able to fall on your supplies and they would break your fall. And my dad got up in a panic and he said, those aren't supplies, that's my son. So I ran over to Rick, and again, and I spelled with Rick. I was like, are you okay? And Rick was laughing and said, can we do that again? Rick also asked, can I go swimming? And the answer was, yes, you can. So when we were little, we used to go camping a lot. And we went camping. Our mom and dad would set up the tent and get everything ready. And they would say to Rick, Rob, and I, why don't you guys go swimming in the pool while we set up? Now, our mom was a swim teacher, so we all learned to swim very young. So when I was about 3 years old, and Rob was about 6, and Rick was about 9, we went down to this pool one time, and I got up on the diving board, and I dove in the deep end, and people were like, wow, that little 3-year-old, what's he doing diving in the deep end? But I could swim really good, even when I was that young. And then nobody was paying any attention to that little 3-year-old anymore, because now Rob went over to Rick's wheelchair, picked Rick up out of his wheelchair, walked over to the side of the pool, and threw Rick into the pool. And as I'm swimming as fast as I can to get to Rick, Rob goes back over to the wheelchair and starts laying out towels, letting Rick sink in the pool, and getting the wheelchair all ready for when Rick comes back out of the pool. Now, I was only 3 years old. I wasn't big enough to lift Rick, but I got to him underwater, and I was holding him underwater, but I couldn't pick him up. So then Rob finally looks around at all the shocked people around the pool and decides, okay, and he jumps in, grabs Rick, pulls him to the surface. Rick has water spraying out of his nose, and he's laughing so hard that he almost fell back into the pool again. So Rick is able to do everything that Rob and I do, because we all just include Rick by saying, yes, you can. So there's a gentleman by the name of Dave McGilvery who is the director of the Boston Marathon. And after one of the races that Dad and Rick ran, Dave McGilvery approached my father and he told him about triathlons. Triathlons are a race where you swim, then bike, and then run all in one race. Rick got very excited to hear about these races with the 3 events in one, and he asked Dad, "Can I do a triathlon?" And the answer was, yes, you can. So Dad and Rick had the running chair that they could work with, but they needed a way to swim. So Dad got an inflatable boat, had a vest made, and there's a rope that attaches from the boat to the vest. So when he swims, he tows Rick through the water. And then they had a specially designed bike made where Rick has a wheelchair seat like this that was welded to the front of a big bike. And that's how they did the bike. Dad and Rick did so many of these that they learned that the bike design with the seat in the front was the best so that they wouldn't tip over, and so Dad could reach around during races and squirt water into Rick's mouth so that he could have water during the races. The new equipment worked great, and after competing in a few small triathlons, Rick heard about this race called the Ironman World Championships that was run in Hawaii. It is considered the greatest triathlon in the world and one of the most difficult endurance events you could ever do. So as soon as Rick heard about this, you know that he asked his dad, he said, "Dad, can I do the Ironman?" And Dad said, "Yes, you can." So we're gonna show you guys another video, and this one tells you the story of the Ironman triathlon.
Registration for the 25th Ironman continues one by one. Some faces we recognize. Here is 58-year-old Richard Holcomb, number 214, back for a second try. He's legally blind and it doesn't matter to him. No, the thing that must occur at all costs is this time, cross the line.
It's more than a race. It's a lifetime event that we'll remember for the rest of our lives. They're either going to carry me off the course or I'm going to cross the finish line.
The stories about people like Richard Holcomb pass through this world as Race Week moves toward this morning. Hey, did you hear about the man who is legally blind? People love to tell and love to hear the stories. Then, appearing near the start line, where they've been before, are father and son, Dick and Ricky Hoyt. There is no one here who hasn't heard about them, their story, and a human commitment that goes far beyond and far back.
January 10th, 1962. We knew there was something wrong, but we did not know exactly what. The doctor said, "Forget Rick. Put him away, put him in an institution. He's going to be nothing but a vegetable for the rest of his life." We cried a little bit. We talked, and we said, no, we're not going to put Rick away. We're going to bring Rick home and bring him up like any other child. We knew Rick was smart. We could tell by looking in his eyes. And when we talked to him, he was paying attention to what we were saying. So we wanted to get a computer built so Rick could communicate with us. Everybody came to our house that night for Rick to say his first words. And everybody was betting, what is the first words Rick is ever going to say? His mom saying, "It's going to be hi, Mom." And me, the dad, saying, "No, it's going to be hi, Dad." Well, the Boston Bruins were going for the Stanley Cup, and the very first words Rick ever said was, "Go Bruins."
Dick is a military man, so he knows a thing or two about commitment. This time, he's just months removed from a heart attack. This gift that he gives to his son, or is it the other way around? Either way, it all started when Rick heard about a charity run for a paralyzed athlete. He asked Dad, and Dad said yes.
The gun went off, and we went off with all the other runners, and everybody thought that Rick and I would just go to the corner and turn around and come back. Well, we didn't. We finished the whole 5 miles, coming in next to last, but not last. And when we got home that night, Rick wrote on his computer, "Dad, when I'm running, it feels like my disability disappears." So that was a very powerful message to me, that we finally found a sport that Rick could get involved in just like everybody else. Rick is my motivator. He inspires me. To me, he's the one out there competing, and I'm just loaning him my arms and my legs so that he can compete. There's just something that gets into me when I'm out there competing with Rick that I can't explain it, and we're able to go faster. And it's just an unbelievable feeling. Rick and I love the Ironman triathlon, to be out there competing with the best triathletes in the world, to be accepted to compete along with these triathletes. Just to be out there on that pier with all the other triathletes and then waiting in the water for that cannon to go off, it was just so exciting. The feeling coming down the finish line at Leahy Drive, it's just an awesome experience. With the crowd there, all the excitement, the noise, and the announcers announcing, all that, your adrenaline just gets flowing.
I may be disabled, but I live a very fulfilling life. And if someone takes the time to get to know me, they will realize that I am no different than anyone else.
Here he is. He graduated from public high school. He's graduated from college. He's out there competing in road races and triathlons. He lives a happier life probably than 95% of the population. Rick would tell you that, you know, if he was physically able to do something, that he'd probably play basketball or football or hockey. But then he always says, no, the first thing he'd do is sit down, have me sit down in his wheelchair, and he'd push me. You know, it really makes me feel good that you know, he appreciates, you know, what I'm trying to do to help him out, and he'd do the same thing for me. Our message is, yes, you can. You can do anything you want to do as long as you make up your mind. You can do it.
If you have ever searched for the meaning of life, stop. The answer lies right here. By the way, Ricky would want us to tell you the Bruins look pretty good this year.
The Bruins did look incredible this year. The playoffs we won't talk about, but they really looked great this year. Team Hoyt, which was Dad and Rick, completed many incredible events. And now Rick and I, along with our brother Rob, are running what's called the Hoyt Foundation. The Hoyt Foundation helps people with disabilities to be included to do things that they love to do, just like what Rick did. Now, Rick told you earlier, we have a question for you at the end of our presentation. I want everybody to think for a minute. Everybody ready to think? Yeah. Okay, be ready to think. I want you to think of this. Think of something that is hard for you to do. All right, everybody got it? You got something that's hard? All right, now, inside your head, in your thought bubble, inside your head, think to yourself, can I do this? I know it's hard. Can I do this? And the answer is, yes, you can. Nice job, boys and girls. So we have 2 gifts that we brought for your school today, okay? So I'm going to show you the first one, and then Rick is going to explain the second one. So the first gift, this is a picture which is called a lithograph. This is a picture of Dad and Rick, and this was actually autographed and signed by our dad before he passed, to be given to our friends at Hopkinton, Massachusetts schools. And it's signed by Rick and Dick Hoyt. So this is a gift for the school that you guys can have and keep forever so that you can remember the message of yes, you can. So we're going to leave that out here for you guys for your school. And now Rick wants to tell you about this other gift that's here in the front. And I'll hold them up for anybody in the back so you can see what it is that we're talking about.
Did everybody like our Yes, You Can presentation? Does anyone know what is happening on Saturday? Please use the colored chalk to write and color in a large Yes, You Can in your school's driveway. Thank you, everyone.
So, did you guys hear what Rick asked you to do? So, not this coming Saturday, but the next Saturday, there's a big race in Hopkinton, and it's called the Dick Hoyt Memorial Yes You Can Run Together. And we're going to give you guys all the sidewalk chalk, and what we'd like you to do next week before the race is write in big, huge words out in the parking lot, because the race is going to start and finish right here at your school. We want you to write Yes You Can in the driveway. Can you all help us do that?
You know, Hopkinton's relationship with Team Hoyt, in specifically Rick and Dick Hoyt, goes back to 2006. They came to town one day and we noticed that their van was literally being held together by duct tape. And a few of us got together and decided we'd try to raise a little money to replace the van. Well, that effort led to about over $100,000 in donations received from people all over the United States. It really brought home for us and for Hopkinton the fact that the Hoyts are a universal story, and we're very, very proud to have built the kind of relationship that Hopkinton has with Team Hoyt.